This week is the Mixtapeathon readathon, which I took part in January, whenever the last one was, but I didn't vlog it, and this time I'm vlogging it. So, the Mixtapeathon bingo board looks like this for the week. Isn't it pretty? Isn't it gorgeous? Aren't there just so many options for reading? And I have decided on my TBR. So obviously there are only 5 out of the 9 prompts that are for books. The other ones I will be vlogging as you would expect. But for the prompts that are indeed bookish, I have the following books. So, and I'll explain a little bit about why I picked them, because one of them's a bit of a stretch and one of them's might crap out on me. We'll see. For an anticipated read, I have Godkiller by Hannah Kaner. I have been wanting to read this book since last year, and I bought this book in like January or something, and I still haven't read it. So this is what I'm reading for my most anticipated reads, because it's not even that big. Like, yeah, it's barely 300 pages. It's a really interesting premise, and I am excited to read it, and I would like to read it soon, please. So that's what that first prompt is going to be. I feel like that fits. Then we've got a book that I'm putting off. I have picked, oh my god, Blackthorn Winter by Liz Williams. This is the sequel to Comet Weather. When I read Comet Weather, I didn't realise there was a sequel and a trequel? Third book. There's a third book in the series. Until my mum offered me to borrow her copies. So I have her copies, which I will be reading. The reason I'm counting this as a book that I've been putting off is that my mum gave me these back in maybe February. I have been putting them off because the first book I thought was going to be a really short one, but it took me a really long time to read because the font in here is itty bitty and the pages are thin. So like, it's a 350 page book, which realistically I could read in 2 or 3 sittings, like quite comfortably. But the first one took me a long time to read, and I'm not entirely sure why it did take me so long to read. But I'm worried that this one's going to take me a long time to read as well. And I spent most of May reading very fat books that took a long time to finish. So I didn't want to pick up another one that I thought would take me a long time to finish. So I'm picking up this for Mixtapeathon, and we'll work my way through the series. Next we have, this is the one that I'm twisting a little bit. So we've got finish a soft DNF or a long read. Now, like I just said, I spent most of May reading very long books. And I would like to take a break from reading very long books. I also don't soft DNF. If I DNF, I'm not picking that book up again. Like, I have to have a really good reason to pick the book up again. So that's not an option for me. I'm also currently, the only book I'm currently in the middle of is Tress of the Emerald Sea by Brandon Sanderson. It's not like a super long book. This copy is 350 pages again, so it's about the same as Blackthorn Winter. So in the grand scheme of things, it's not a very long book. However, it's a library book and it's due back on Friday, and I can't renew it because someone else has holds on it. And I'm only 39 pages into it, and I want to finish it. I don't want to have to buy this without reading it first. So I'm putting it on this bingo slot. That's how I'm interpreting finish a long read, because I have to finish this by Friday. I've already had to. There's 2 other library books that I've also got holds on that I'm just not going to finish and don't fit any of these prompts. I also want to take a break from library books because I've done nothing but read library books in May, and I would like to tackle some of my physical TBR. So apart from this one, everything else is from my physical TBR. So that's my book for the middle prompt. Then we have Find a New Comfort Read. Now obviously I can't predict what's going to be a comfort read, but I have a pretty good guess, and I suspect that it might be. I have got, this is, it's very hard to see because it's a small book and it's lost its dust jacket, but this is The Terrors of St. Trinian's. I picked this up in the charity shop that I volunteer in for like £2.50, and it's got all these fantastic illustrations all the way through. Look at her. It's only like just over 100 pages. And I am very nostalgic about St. Trinian's because my parents had a set of the old black and white films on DVD, so I used to watch those a lot when I was a kid. I didn't know there were books until I saw this in the charity shop. It shouldn't have surprised me that there were books first, but there are books. And I want to read this because I think it's going to be really nostalgic. I think it's going to be easy to read. It's really not very long, so I could probably read this in one sitting if I tried hard enough. But I think that's a pretty good contender for a new comfort read. If it isn't, then I'm just going to fail that space. I don't think I'm going to have time to pick up another book. But, you know, this is what we're trying. And then finally, I've got a book from a favourite author. I have had A House with Good Bones by T. Kingfisher on my physical TBR for a month and a half now. And it's about damn time I read it because it's a haunted house. It's T. Kingfisher, and T. Kingfisher does haunted house books really well. And it's a pretty foiled hardback, which I never get. But this was one of the books. Because it's T. Kingfisher, I bought it new and I bought it in hardback, essentially. I don't normally do that because I don't love hardbacks, but this one's small, I can actually hold it. I'm hoping it'll be another 5-star. With T. Kingfisher, it does tend to be 5 stars or 3 stars. There's rarely any in between. It's either 5 stars, 3 stars, or DNFs. It's very easy to like pigeonhole her books into one of those, but she's a very good writer and I like her a lot. So the way this vlog is going to work is I'm just going to work my way across the bingo board from left to right and take you along with me. We've got 4 other prompts that aren't book related, so I will vlog them as well. And yeah, I'm hoping this is going to be a good week. I'm working quite a lot this week, so I might not get a lot of reading done in the beginning, but I have 3 days off at the end of the week, so I'm hoping that will even things out a little bit. On to the first prompt. Let's talk about God Killer then, shall we? This was an anticipated read because of the cover and the concept. God Killer is about a god killer who finds a god that is tied to a noble daughter, tied to the daughter of a noble family, and therefore she doesn't feel like she can kill the god. There is so much more to that story, and it took a very long time to get there. This book is less than 300 pages, and it dragged so much. The setup was good. The middle was dull and perfunctory, and then the end was a satisfactory wrap-up of the plot. The middle of this was really hard to get through, partly because it was a travel sequence, and I don't love travel sequences, so I'm biased. It was well written, the characters were well fleshed out, they were very much individuals, and it was a book where lots of little things became important towards the end, but I just didn't care in the middle. It managed to feel like a sprawling epic despite being under 300 pages, which is a feat that should be praised. But other than that, I don't have a lot to say for it. Some of the imagery was quite good in the sense that it was imaginative. I was interested to see how the gods were going to be portrayed, because that's something I personally find quite difficult in books that I'm writing. I try to avoid gods because I don't know how to portray them as characters in their own right. I don't understand how they can be gods but also have flaws in my own mind. However, in this book, I think that was handled quite well. It was a very obvious magic system. I would argue a hard magic system. It was logical and it made sense. I would recommend people read this if they were interested in the concept. It could also be the fatigue of doing a readathon got to me while reading this, because this was the last book I read. I'm not filming these clips in order. Yeah, it was a 3-star book. It's not awful, I'm not unhauling it, and it does seem to be the start of a series. When I realised it was the setup for the series, I was immediately like, oh fuck that, I'm not reading another series. But towards the end couple of pages got me. I think I might pick it up, but also I will be prepared to DNF it if it doesn't live up to it. So there we go. That was an anticipated read that didn't quite pan out as planned. On to the next prompt. The book I am letting go of from my TBR is Embertide by Liz Williams. Embertide is the third book in the Comet Weather trilogy. And I won't explain why now, but it will make sense later. But I did the thing. Bingo for me. Let's talk about the book that I was putting off. Blackthorn Winter by Liz Williams. I got 100 pages into this before I DNF'd. What it boils down to, I think it's a me thing rather than a book thing, in the sense that I loved the first book in the trilogy. I thought it was really different. I thought it was really interesting. The writing style was something I haven't really read in other books before, and I thought it was good. It was a bit of a slog to get through, but I enjoyed it and I was quite excited by it. Reading the second one, I just came to the conclusion I didn't want to read another book about these characters, because it felt like we had gotten them to a place of sort of stability almost. And then we're just chucking it, like the first book could have been a standalone. The second book, judging from the 100 pages that I read, didn't necessarily need to exist, and then the fact that there's a third one after that that's even longer just sort of, it really put me off, so I DNF'd it. Yeah, I think that's just a me thing, and it's a shame, but it means I don't meet that bingo requirement, so that's no bingo for me. I just finished reading Tress on the Emerald Sea by Brandon Sanderson, which means I have completed the 5th prompt for Mixtapeathon. Gold star for me. So Tress of the Emerald Sea is about Tress, who is a girl who lives on a rocky island in the middle of the Verdant Sea, which is a sea that is not full of water, but is full of spores. Spores that when they touch water start to sprout vines just wherever. So obviously people have a healthy fear of these spores, because if you inhale them you're going to get an explosion of vines in your skull, and there are a number of nasty other ways that they could kill you. This book follows Tress as she sets off to try and save her one true love, essentially, who's been kidnapped by an evil sorceress, and adventures unfurl from there. This was one of Brandy Sandy's secret projects that he did during lockdown, when he announced that he had written 5 books during lockdown, like some sort of authorly maniac. that he is. I've heard loads of hype from people, lots of 5-star ratings, and it almost lived up to that. I gave it a 4 stars. I did enjoy this. For me, this read very much like your typical adventure novel, the sort that are usually written for kids, even though this is very much not written for kids. This is very much an adult book. It was very well written. It was slow to start. I wasn't convinced by the hype until about 200 pages in. Like, it's a good book, don't get me wrong, like, it was interesting, but I couldn't understand why people were so excited about it until the little breadcrumbs that were being dropped, that you didn't necessarily realise were breadcrumbs, all started sort of snowballing together in the second half of the book. So I was dubious at first, and this did take me longer than I thought it would to read. Yeah, I enjoyed it. I think the narration style threw me, because it's told in third person and it's told in omniscient third person, but you learn pretty quickly, so I don't think this is a spoiler, that the narrator is actually a character in the book that you meet, which is an interesting take. I don't think I've read a book like that before, and that threw me for a loop a little bit. It is definitely told more whimsically than his other books. There is an element of Pratchett about it, but only a small element. It is cleverly written. It is well fleshed out on the world building side, but I think I would expect that for a book that's already set within the Cosmere, so he's already got a universe set up to just set this book in. Like, that would make sense for me. Like, I would be disappointed if it wasn't as well built out and fleshed out as it was. I think overall I enjoyed it. I don't know if I'd reread it, and I wasn't blown away by it, but it is a very clever book, and when you read the author's note at the end of the book, where he talks about the inspirations for the story, I think it makes a lot of sense as to why he wrote it the way that he did. He explains in the beginning of the book, I think he explains it on the blurb, that he wrote this book for his wife initially, like it was a secret project from anyone, like he hid it from his editors and his team and all of that. And I think it does sort of read that way a little bit in the beginning. And then it snowballs into what I would consider a good book. Am I making sense? I don't know if I'm making sense. Yeah, I think the upshot is just that I enjoyed it, but I wasn't blown away by it. The fact that I could predict where the story was going, I don't see as a good sign, because I can't usually predict where these sorts of stories are going, because I don't look for them. I don't look for the clues, because I like to be surprised and I like to be blown away by smart writing and smart plotting and things like that. So yeah, I rated it a 4 star. I will say I've also seen people describe this as a cozy fantasy. In no way to me is this cozy. Just because you've got a kind, well-managed protagonist doesn't make it cozy to me, because there are very high stakes. People die in this book. That's not low stakes cozy fantasy to me. So I disagree with the people that classify it that way. And I think Brandon Sanderson's name and his work, for me, have gathered such a reputation that they're just going to be good. Like, they're all going to be masterpieces. The bar has now been set so high that if anyone else had written this, I think I would have been blown away, maybe. But I think I expected more of him. But then do I mean that in the sense that I'm used to reading epic stuff by him? Was I just underwhelmed by the fact that this was quite a straightforward story rather than this sprawling epic? I don't know. I think I'm going to have to sit with that thought for a minute. On to the next prompt. Setting some positive intentions. I'm not usually the sort of person that does this, but there is something coming up that I am doing that lends itself to this prompt, so I think I can do it. I am doing a step challenge in July, August and September. I'm going to walk 1 million steps, which is roughly 10,000 a day. This is not something I do in my normal life. I give myself a gold star if I get above 5,000 steps a day, and I'm signing up to do 1 million in 3 months for Diabetes UK. I'm attempting to raise £100 for Diabetes UK through doing this, and I think the intention I want to set is that I am going to do it. I am going to do 1,000,000 steps in 3 months. The reason I think I can do it and make that change is I have started walking home from work. I started a new job last month, and the walk home is picturesque. It takes me just under 2 hours and is 11,000 steps in itself. So combine that with just the regular steps that I would do getting to and throughout the working day, I can manage up to 16,000 steps a day while I'm at work, which would then make up for some much needed days off during the week if I'm not working. I think I can do it. I think it's going to be tough, but I will say, when you sign up, they send you this like a step tracker, and I'm an absolute sucker for like a tracking thing like this where I get to tick off however many steps I get to throughout the journey. So that's going up on my wall come July, and I think I can do it. That is my positive intention. I think it will be a healthy thing to do for me. And I will raise money for charity at the same time. So if you want to donate anything at all, the link will be in my bio. It's a Just Giving link. That's my positive intention. Let's talk about finding a new comfort read, or not, as the case may be. So I read The Terrors of St. Trinian's in an attempt to find a new comfort read. I read it because I loved the films. I thought it'd be nostalgic. And when I say films, I mean the black and white ones, the weird 2000 ones, like all the films ever made of St. Trinian's I love. I didn't know there were books until I found one in a charity shop and bought it instantly. It's really short, it's full of illustrations that I love, but oh my god, is it a product of its time. It was published in the 50s, and while the girls at St. Trinian's are a significant part of the story, the main part of the story follows a bunch of white male bureaucrats, one of which is trying to romance these underage girls to progress his own career, and there are only 2 girls not named, plenty of them are named. There are only 2 main characters from St. Trinian's. One is the beautiful blonde-haired, blue-eyed, incredibly kind, gorgeous, perfect angel head girl, and one of them is Angela Menace, who is the dark-haired troublemaker who'll break your arm because you looked at her funny. And the whole story revolves around this sneaky bureaucrat falling in love with the head girl and then turning around and being supposedly, seduced by Angela Menace because her father has lots of money and she promises him lots of money. It is unclear why she wants to marry this man, other than spite, to spite the head girl, Chloe Languish, I think her name is. And then once they are married, he's all happy and has this brilliant job, and she's out of school, and that seems to be the only thing she gets out of this arrangement. And it's just so heavily set in the patriarchy, it ruined it for me. The illustrations are brilliant. The bits where we do see snippets of St. Trinian's life is good, and I'm so glad that's what the films took and ran with. But that is not what the original books are about, and it made me sad, so I don't think I can count this as a comfort read. It was nostalgic to read at first, and the plot just ruined it. So I think this is a failed bingo. I read A House with Good Bones by T. Kingfisher. T. Kingfisher is kind of an auto-buy author for me at this point. I will read everything that she writes, and this one was a new release, so I picked it up. It is another haunted house book. T. Kingfisher is very good at doing haunted house books. This was a 4-star read for me. It wasn't a 5-star. It didn't blow me away, but it was very good. The thing I find with T. Kingfisher books is quite often I can make a very good guess at what the first twist is going to be, but I never know where the second one's going. So because of that, there's always that little hump in the middle where I'm waiting for the character to catch up with where I'm at. But because the characters are always so well-rounded and down to earth and relatable and just detailed in such specific ways, the hump isn't like a drag like it would be in some other books, which is a definite bonus. Other than being a haunted house, what can I say about this book without spoiling anything? The premise is that a daughter goes home to her mother. She has to stay with her mother for 6 months because the archaeological dig that she was due to work on has been postponed. So she's staying with her mother for 6 months, and her mother is living in her grandmother's old house. When she gets there, her mother is not at all acting like the person the daughter expects her to. The mother's just not acting normal, like not at all. And we gradually find out why that is, and it is suitably disturbing. There was one scene that I made the mistake of reading while I was eating. That might just be a me thing, but there was a very specific element in that scene that I hate. Like, I viscerally hate when people get weird with this thing. I'm not going to say what it is because it's spoilery, but I shouldn't have read it while I was eating, and I did, and I suffered, and it added to the atmosphere of the book. I would definitely recommend this book if you like haunted house mysteries. I would recommend it if you like small enclosed mysteries with not that many characters. It's set in like a little suburban cul-de-sac. There's a definite theme of bugs and birds, specifically because the main character is a word I can't pronounce, but she looks at, it's like when you take an archaeologist and an entomologist and you just smush them together. She looks at dead bugs in burial sites and like archaeological digs and stuff. So there is a lot of bug talk, but I think anyone who is like past the age of 30, I don't know, in their like late 20s onwards will very much relate to this character, and it's very enjoyable. So yes, I think it's a successful read from T. Kingfisher. Shame it's not a 5-star, but to be honest, as much as I love her haunted house stuff, it's her fairy tale stuff that tends to get 5 stars from me. And it intrigues me that I can pigeonhole her that easily. Like, her fairy tale stuff is always 5 stars. Her haunted house horror stuff is usually about 4 stars. And then her younger YA middle grade stuff is very, very hit or miss because I don't like reading younger books. But her stuff is good just because of the way that she writes. I don't know. She's like, I don't know. She's a favourite author. I'm gonna read her stuff. I'm just gonna keep reading her stuff that she puts out. I'm very excited for Thornhedge, which is coming out later this year, November, maybe. But it's got so many elements that I'm excited for because it's fairy tales, it's changelings, and it's a retelling of Rapunzel in like a really dark way. And there's witch. I'm so excited for that book. I'm so excited. Successful prompt, I think. On to the next prompt. Oh no, that's the final prompt. Well done me, gold star. I did it. I did Mixtapeathon. Did it. Did the readathon. Did the thing. Gold star for me. Pat on the back. I did get a bingo. I was aiming for getting all 9 squares, but I think missing 2 and only getting 7 of them is very reasonable, and I should be proud of that. So I'm gonna be. I enjoyed the challenge of this readathon, particularly the filming of this, because it was a nice structure to vlog around. It meant I didn't have to sort of pull the camera out willy-nilly. I could plan out what I wanted to do when I wanted to do it. I enjoyed that aspect a lot. I'm bummed that I didn't have any like outstanding reads, because I had a DNF, some fine books and an okay book. No 5 stars, which is a shame, but maybe that's too much to ask. I've done a lot of reading 2 TBRs in the last month or so, and that's not necessarily my natural reading pattern. So I'm going to give myself a well-deserved break after this. I'm finally down to the last 2 library books out of 20 that I borrowed from the library and have been trying to read, and then I did this readathon. So I will be reading those in a relaxed manner. I will be focusing on other things that make me happy. I did appreciate the excuse to take some me time with this readathon. I haven't taken time to just like sit and listen to music because it's nice for a while, because my commutes have been taken up with audiobooks, and if I want extra noise while I'm doing something at home, I tend to just watch YouTube. So having an excuse to do that again was good, and I enjoyed that. But yeah, gold star for me. I did it. I read some books. Thank you very much to the girls who put together Mixtapeathon. A lot of hard work went into it, and it's really lovely to see everyone participating in it, and I will be back for the next one. That was a video. Have a nice day.